Delights John channel here over at Subscribestar. I got a mailbox. If you want to mail me some comics or some, I don't know, old VHS tapes. So Expendables 4, hear me out on why it bombed. Because we've mostly lost our boner for Hollywood. Who is Expendables for? Men. Half the country is, I guess, various Euro groups, Latin groups, and then black groups. That's your big marketing, who you're marketing to. But men know that there's kind of something wrong with Hollywood. It's not for men in general anymore, and very much absolutely not for the most hated white male or Christian. That's like, obviously that's off the table. The only Christian stuff that can get made would be who's that guy who's in that thing, Mel Gibson, and that other dude. Occasionally a Christian movie will slip through the cracks every few years or something, but it's not mainstream, which is kind of weird because there is a market for it. It's like they're deliberately avoiding it. But the thing is, there's also this weird vibe for men in general. They know, how do I say this, that Hollywood is doing their, and this is I think there's a split between men and women on this, where men's radars are tuned to trouble on the horizon in a way that women's are not. I was going to say, I hope that doesn't come off wrong, but I know there's like two women who are going to listen to this. Hollywood is doing the soy bread and circuses, corn syrup, shiny object distraction thing. There are just too many factions in America that are in conflict. All these diverse groups hate each other, and it's fomented by the parasites in Hollywood, but at the same time, they want your money. Men are a little bit less willing to go into some Barbie fantasy land echo chamber like women, because women are being used as puppets to stay in that echo chamber of delusion. The fantasy appeal of movies for men is kind of losing steam because it's too far removed from reality. We can't indulge these Pollyanna globalist fantasies because they're so far out of whack with the real world. And honestly, sometimes I know I'm onto something with some of these points, but I just need somebody smarter to think about it because I'm doomed to be a midwit. So Commando in the 90s, or Predator or Total Recall in the 80s, or Predator Total Recall in the 90s, that worked in the theaters because the country kind of still had hope. Yes, I know this sounds like a very black-pilled Sunday. It should be honk-pilled, get clowny with it. Ride the atom bomb all the way down and wave your cowboy hat. I don't remember what that movie was. I think that was Slim Pickens. But I do think I still have that one on VHS. Anyway, so I saw Total Recall in the theater. People were pumped up. A silly movie for sure. But it was people mostly on the same page. The background spirit of the country was way different then. One was at 91 or something. The media in Hollywood were not pushing this kind of anti-white hatred nonstop that like they are now. Or at least they were way more subtle about it. And I know I'm a little bit more jaded than most. Oh, you think? Because I'm covering this stuff, but I'm not really like, I'm covering it kind of lightly. I'm not doing like deep dive. And you know, the funny thing is, I also know that anyone who covers politics or pop culture, I know they know what's up. Even if they're on YouTube and they're not saying anything, like I know they know. There's no way that you couldn't know what was up if you're covering stuff even kind of casually like I'm doing. Anyway, the thing is, I know a lot of other people are feeling this vibe that it's all kind of bread and circuses pushed on you by the most vile demons on earth. Like, how do you make a lot of movies now that you used to make only a few years ago where the audience doesn't care about the structures of the battles and the alliances that you've set up because they're so not organic, they're so they're so astroturf, they're such just globalist propaganda, that kind of bullshit found family concept. I said it with Lord of the Rings versus Rings of Power, where they took a battle of good versus evil, the men, elves, hobbits versus the orcs and the goblins and Saruman and Saurian, and you know, one guy did get subverted, so that it kind of shows a little bit of a nuance there. But what Rings of Power did, there was the Amazon remake, which they spent like $700-800 million on, and it's going to cost them probably $500 million in lost money. But to Amazon, they're not even going to notice that. But what Rings of Power did was to mix all these groups up. So they did something similar to Dungeons and Dragons over the years, and yeah, I mean, they're just going to get so ridiculous with it that eventually it's just going to probably lose more and more market share. So now it's the rainbow cloak of many colors, where it's all things to all people, so it means nothing. Rings of Power was one mixed group of Google Corporation versus fighting another mixed group of Apple Corporation. So who cares? You're not fighting for your blood because everyone is mixed. So who cares who wins? Like, what's at stake here? It's like, I don't know. It's like if one half of LA fighting the other half of LA. It's like you're not really fighting for anything. You're not fighting for anything that matters. I mean, maybe you could get psyched and brainwashed into fighting them for a little while, but eventually you'd be like, wait, this isn't where our natural alliances lie. Our natural alliances are going to be tribal, not some kind of artificial, by who pays the highest dollar for, soldiers of fortune type of stuff. So they did the same thing with Star Wars movies and streaming, except in general, the bad guys are more often going to be, of course, blonde or red haired. And the thing is, once you see that, you never unsee that. And it might not be obvious to the casual viewer, but he knows that he just doesn't care about movies anymore, not as much, or not for streaming. Hollywood has kind of taken on the feeling of being for women or soy boys. Like, why would men be watching TV? It feels like you should be thinking of Rome. It feels like it's something that they are using to distract us from something else. Streaming or TV, it just doesn't feel manly. And I don't like when I say that's such a loaded phrase, but like when it comes down to it, men are wired for a different vibrational, to be more aware of future danger than I think women are, because women are taking care of the kids and men are taking care of the family in general. But the thing is, like, it all feels very feminine and subversive. It feels like a hostile foreign government or aliens got control of the broadcast and are deliberately making subversive, corrupt propaganda. Yeah, I know it's a little bit tinfoil hat, but I think some of you know what I'm trying to poorly say is that something is very wrong, and they're still making these disabled bad movies telling us that everything is cool. It's like, what was that movie about the pod people movie with, I think, Leonard Nimoy, a bunch of other people were in it. It was a pretty solid movie, filmed in San Francisco. I think the lady from Amityville Horror was in it. Anyway, so when they do touch on real world events, the narrative is the exact opposite of what we know is reality, which makes us feel that Hollywood is not what it purports itself to be. We're listening to, the They Live scene is like, that's a movie you could just go back and watch every 6 months. We're listening to based live streams on Odyssey or Spaces on Twitter, which is actually catching on pretty well. Once Twitter gets the video hosting, right now it's just kind of audio podcast, but everyone, you can get in there and listen, and then they can call on you, so you can speak if you want. Or Telegram. It's allowing all these different perspectives from Hollywood. Like, we know they're lying to us, they know it, and yet they keep making movies that lose money because they have a narrative to maintain. I look at movies now, and there's nothing I would pay for. People don't hate Hollywood. It's like that might have been a long time ago. Now it's just annoyance. They've kind of morphed into people starting to forget about it. They had a writer's strike. I thought that had gone on for a couple of weeks. It's gone on for a few months now. Almost nobody cares about the Hollywood writer's strike. Because, ultimately you're looking like, what are they doing? Oh, they're making propaganda. Where even the left, even if you're on the left, you got to know that, like, Hollywood is not really worth caring about. Because, like, if it disappeared overnight, it wouldn't matter. People don't like Hollywood. They know it's darker and weirder. The whole Disney Florida stuff, where Disney really seems to be focusing on the kids. Bob Iger, but it's kind of coming, or is it Zelensky and Maria Abramovic? Weird. You're gonna have to go look up that story. It's not something that YouTube would be cool with. I mean, this stuff is like, are they really Satanists? Are they like literally going to start sacrificing children to Moloch any day now? So it's all coming to the point where people are kind of realizing that many of the people in Hollywood, and I'm so stoked for Rumble and Odyssey having live streams where people are able to talk about stuff a little bit more that just is not allowed on YouTube. But we're coming to the point of realizing that Hollywood is pushing this stuff, and they're either evil or actually mentally ill, or some combination. It seems like the schism is beyond the normal political spectrum of left and right. Disney has a show now about a girl falling in love with a demon or something. I mean, there's just no shortage of weird stuff on Disney, Amazon, or Netflix. But I mean, it's going beyond weird to where you're looking around and you're trying to talk to other people and go like, there's something going on here, right? I mean, this is like, I'm not alone here. You talk to people like, yeah, there's definitely something going on here. This is... And it's the same thing going on with your American tax dollars going to Ukraine and going to all these foreign countries. You look around, it's like, so America's got some pretty serious inflation now. Like, people are struggling. You got homeless tent cities. You got the middle class getting screwed, paying for everything. It's like, yeah. So is it really the best time to give money away to foreign? Oh yeah, more money for these foreign countries. Oh, something's going on with that. Yeah, something's going on with a lot of. Oh, you're just a tinfoil hat. You're just crazy. Just more tax dollars. Yeah. So like, what does a gallon of gas cost in California now? What does a thing of milk cost for a growing family? It's like this isn't sustainable, and yet it's like the end stage of Republic, where they're just looting the treasury. Anyway, it feels like this schism is not something. It feels like there's irreconcilable differences, and Hollywood is the left, and in or out of Hollywood, there's all this other either satanic or Bolshevik stuff going on. So when Tom Cruise makes Mission Impossible or The Expendables, it's hard to care. The bad guys are going to be, let me just guess, a German rogue arms dealers double-crossing the Russian mob because they need to make everyone white, preferably red or blonde hair, or if they're too old to make them gray, or sometimes they shave the hair their heads when it becomes too obvious, like in Birds of Prey. All the bad guys had to be fair, but they couldn't make literally everyone blonde or red haired, so they had to, and they definitely didn't want any dark hair because that would suggest Middle Eastern or Latin. So they shaved a lot of the guys' heads and had them wearing hats, and like they were indeterminate because they couldn't. If there's going to be somebody identified in a movie, somebody like in Star Wars, the streaming stuff, they did this where the identified bad guys are not wearing helmets so you can see their skin color, but everyone else is wearing some kind of costume. They're fully covered up. But when you look at who the identified antagonists are, they're always going to be people who look like you and me. Anyway, so they needed to make everyone white and not Middle Eastern, Chinese, black. And it's weird when even as a casual viewer of iconic movies, you start going back and seeing how many big drug kingpins are fair-skinned people who look like me and not Latin Americans, or the bad guys are Germans, Russians, like all the time. Even back in the 80s, Die Hard, it was evil blonde Germans. I go back and I look at all these movies. I realize the parasites were subverting and brainwashing even back then. In Total Recall, they could have made the bad guy Indian, Asian, black, whatever. It's the future. It could have been like an Indian space station or whatever it was on Mars or something. But I don't think too many guys are consciously seeing this like I am, but subconsciously, they just don't care about Hollywood. A rogue blonde group is selling plutonium and diamonds to a rogue blonde group from South Africa to Germany, or John Wick's Russian mob. Eventually, you look at decades of Hollywood and you realize it's almost always been this kind of subversive crap. I remember there's a scene in The Killing Fields. I don't know when that was filmed. Pol Pot in Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge, I think. And there was a scene where a radio was playing in the background talking about the evil Nixon in evil America dropping bombs on a peaceful village, wrong target, slaughtering or whatever. That scene struck out as so weird and out of character for the movie. You already had the evil guy, the group, the Khmer Rouge, but the producer had to include that scene in there to tell you that, yeah, Nixon was still evil. It felt like such a liberal soy boy moment to sneak that in there, but it's like it just was set off immediate flags when I heard it. Hey, Hollywood, I agree. I think every war in the past 150 years should not have been fought, including the Civil War, and definitely the wars of 1914 and after, and the endless banker wars that they caused to get a Federal Reserve and taxation, which to date has caused $33 trillion in debt or something. I mean, money at that level is like imaginary money. So no, we need to tax you to pay for wars and ocean away. No, we don't. I think the Founding Fathers warned us against that. So anyway, Oppenheimer did well because it was bundled up with Barbie, but also it was a simpler film. The Japanese actually were evil. And before you have a soy fit of rage about that, though you're probably not listening at this point, read about the Pacific Theater before you start defending them. And don't get me wrong, there are rabbit holes with the locations that got Fat Man and Little Boy. I know like half the audience knows what I'm talking about there. But as a movie, it connected to the past when America was a nicer place. America is sorry Trump, an S-hole now. Who cares about some special forces fighting foreign wars or rogue agents? Nobody cares about America as a whole because it's not worth fighting for anymore. It's too diverse. It's full of people who hate each other. If Kim Un wants to nuke San Francisco or L.A., knock yourself out. It doesn't feel like America anyway. Please, Putin, start with New York. Go to town. A nation is Natal. America is a commercial zone. It's Google and Apple versus MasterCard and Wells Fargo. Who cares? We're just fungible cattle to these NGOs, cattle debt slaves to be used up, exploited, and then just turned into Soylent Green. And don't get me wrong, I'd love to see movies, but the movies I want to see are not going to be made in America. Imagine Wolverines, but different. And I'll leave it at that. Click the links to join channel over at Subscribestar and mahalo.